it's quite interesting to actually look at some of these abstract tantric teachings and then seeing, you know, where our modern time, the minute we say Tantra yoga, where does it all take into? Because essentially, you see, the Tantra explains it, that the teachings of Tantra begins with understanding the process of creation, the process of evolution, and then the process of dynamic change and the living universe, and where the problem, the suffering lies into it, and how do we gain access to that cosmic bliss or the cosmic Satchitananda, the absolute bliss, absolute joy. And in those teachings of the Tantra is really an absolute sort of, to me, ancient science to talk on the Woman Day. It's quite interesting that it came in such a perfectly timing around, because in Tantra, in ancient Tantra, the Shakti, the goddess, used to be worshipped as the primary or the primordial force, and then the Shiva, the Shiva was worshipped as a absolute energy. So in the creation, then the Shakti is really the one dwelling through all the creation, and then the Shiva is the one who holds that together. So it's a perfect sort of concept to think and to talk about. Okay, I'm going to skip that. Now, in Tantra, we always worship Lord Shiva as the absolute consciousness or the divine consciousness, and he is known as Yogeshwar. And remember, please remember, every time we are worshipping Lord Shiva in Tantra, we worship him known as Adi Nareshwar. So he was the symbol of the male and the female energy together. And if you all remember that beautiful statue we had in the ashram, that hopefully we managed to pull it back together, and that is a dynamic form of the Shiva statue in tantric traditions we worship, and half of the statue is the male aspect of the Shiva, and then the other half is the female aspect of Shiva or the Shakti. So here actually, when we worshipping the divine or the absolute consciousness or the supreme, then the Shiva and Shakti both worship together. He's also known as Yogeshwar, Parampita, Adi Yoga Guru, and is something I can skip because the last time we talked quite a lot about Lord Shiva. What is Tantra? Now, the Tantra actually comes from the two roots. So the first of the, Krishna, can you close that door? It's a bit noisy. Yeah, so the Tantra is another Sanskrit word, and it comes from the two roots. So the Tan, the first part of the root, it means the body, and then the Tra means tool. But actually, the Tantra, when you take the Antra, the second part of it also means a thread, a string. So the Tantra is sort of thinking of our body and the tools. The tools can be your mind, your practices, and all that, connecting them together with a thread, with the Tantra, so the I connects with the higher or the supreme self. And in the tantric traditions, then we have around 112 different meditation or the visualization practices. And some of the practices we already learned, like all the Loma Viloma visualizations, they come from the tantric energy traditions. And some of the Nadi Suddhi Jnana Kiryas and the Marmisthanam, the 26-point body awareness, that comes from the tantric visualization. So in way, you know, all the visualization or the yoga nidra relaxation practices you all have in your folder, they all come from the tantric tradition of the energy. And here we're talking about, you know, the connection of the I with the supreme consciousness of the Param Shiva or the divine self. So every time we're talking about the supreme or the higher or the cosmic energy, we always looking at the Shiva and the Shakti variation. So now in tantric tradition, some people follow the Shiva path, so where they worship Lord Shiva as the absolute. And then the second path, we have the Shakti, so we follow the goddess as the primary energy. Now the way the Tantra, you know, Lord Shiva, he explains into Kashmir or Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, he explains the Shiva, which actually translates as nothingness. The absolute meaning of the word Shiva, Shiva has many meanings. One of them is the pure, the absolute consciousness, but it also has the meaning in Sanskrit, which means nothingness. So this nothingness or the absolute consciousness is almost like the infinite and nothing. They don't really have the much of meaning, is it? So you can say infinite is like all and everything, or you can say nothing. So that's that sort of energy or the translation we have for the Shiva. And then the Shakti is the creative or the transformative aspect of it. So all that manifest because of the Shakti. So in the Tantric tradition, then you, me, all the material, the living, non-living material, everything that exists, it has manifested by the power or by the potential of the Shakti. Now we can translate them as the active and the resting. So the Shiva, it should be other way around. Sorry, the resting and the active. So Shiva will be the resting aspect of the cosmic energy, and then the Shakti is the active aspect of the energy. It's active in each and everything is going through all the living and non-living processes. Now, the way Tantra explains the whole universe, it dwells on the perfect balance between Shiva and Shakti. It's a dynamic dance or the cosmic dance between these two energies. Some people translate it as polarity, the positive and negative. Some people, you can see it as prana apana, loma viloma, yin yang, tai chi. So this concept of Shiva and Shakti actually exists not only in this concept, but in so many other concepts too. In electricity, then you are talking about the positive and the negative wires in your electricity. Same with the magnetic folds for the magnetic energies. And you can see, all that really exists when there is a perfect balance or the perfect alignment, perfect dance between these two energies. Now, the way, to me, the Tantric teachings begins, it begins with explaining, what is the consciousness of Shiva and what is the potential of Shakti. So actually, without the Shakti, here Lord Shiva explains, without the potential or the power of Shakti, nothing ever will manifest. It's almost like if the Shiva is the seed, then the Shakti is the earth that allows or that gives the seed everything it needs to grow. It allows the potential to attain that absolute. So at the beginning, where there was nothing, into the nothingness, before our Big Bang theory or before our creation began, it said there was only the Shakti and Shiva, these two energies, dwelling or residing or resting into what we call the Bindu. So the Bindu is like a dot. And I love the way Sankhya explains, the Tantra explains the dot, because somebody asked Kapil, the one who wrote the Sankhya, he said, so can you explain me what this Bindu, this dot really mean? So he said, oh, the Bindu we're talking here, where the Shiva and Shakti dwell or rest or reside into each other before the creation began, is the 1 millionth fraction of a hair you take from your eyebrows. So think if you take one little, when you put your hair, boys, I'm teaching. So if you dip your one eyebrow hair into the ink and put it on the paper, and then you split that in 1 million times, what's left? So it's almost like a nothing, isn't it? So at the beginning of that, there was nothing. And in that, we also have the Adi Sab, the primordial sound. So the sound is also eternal. And that Adi Sab there, the Adi, the primordial sound, actually gives birth to the Pranava, the Om. And then that Om, what that Om does, it ripples, it creates the resonance, it creates the shaking up, the Big Bang explosion between the Shiva and Shakti, the potential and the absolute. And then the creation begins. And I find it very interesting because the Big Bang theory, if you look at it, the only thing they don't know how or what switched it on. So here we're talking about there was a sound, and the sound gives birth to the Om, and then the Om gives birth to everything. And once the sound comes, then the Varna, the letter will come, and then the combination of letter takes us into the nama, which is the word, and then the word will have the meaning. And as the word, so actually the whole universe was created through the sound. And as the sound expands, then the sound changes into different energies, different vibrations, and then the different vibrations will create different materials. And this is how, you know, the essence of the language Sanskrit, the Sanskrit language in the way we believe historically came at this point. So the language came, the Sanskrit came before actually the objects manifested, and then the rishis, the most of the Sanskrit terms or the words they used were resonating to what they were saying. And I think, to me, you know, like one of them I found quite powerful in my practice. You just like sit back and begin to chant or think, Om Shanti 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 Om Shanti. If you chant it a few times, suddenly something calms within us, isn't it? It's almost like, you know, whatever waves, whatever things I'm muddling into, I'm feeling upset or disturbed or whatever, if I can create that space to chant that mantra Shanti 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 a few times. And then we have what we call the intellectual language, the intellectual words, where we are making words to justify our language. So the most of the modern languages, the way, you know, the Sanskrit scholars will see, those modern languages, the words are created by our mind. So I definitely, you know, when I chant, if I try to chant the mantra, Om, peace, 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 it seems to be almost like when I chant it, it splits me into the bits, like piecing me through, you know, splitting me through something, like I become like a piece of something. I don't know. It can be just in my mind. But it's worth, you know, I would like all of you to experiment to see, try to chant different words and the phrases and see how it resonates through. So here it's giving birth to all that. Okay, now, so as we're talking about the sounds are taking us through, and then the creation begins. So when this explosion happens, then it says the first energy that comes out of that Shiva-Shakti potential, the absolute potential, is the cosmic consciousness. So far we were talking about nothingness. Now we're talking about something that exists, okay? And in that somethingness, when you and me, to me, where every time we talk about the divine, the God, the Lord, however you say the word, we are talking about this cosmic consciousness, Param Shiva. So that will be the first manifest or evolute from Shiva and Shakti. With the help of the pranava, the sound Om. And then that leads us into the another evolution, which is the Shiva and Shakti. So now we're talking, even though we're using the same word here, but now here we are talking about them in our living, in our dynamic universe. Then comes the cosmic intelligence, Mahata. Now, intelligence, when we're using the word intelligence here, I don't know, like it's another Sanskrit word that we don't really have much of the meaning here, but we're not talking about intelligence like how much math, science, or engineering, or doctorate, or filmmaking, or I don't know, website or Instagram things, you know. We really talking about that absolute intelligence that is inbuilt in each and every living and non-living organism. To me, we talk about the primordial qualities that are there. And I like, you know, something I keep bringing it again and again. I like the way one of my professors used to explain. Think of this cosmic intelligence, your own individual intelligence. Say we all were eating the same porridge every morning when we were in ashram. Now I'm reminding you all the porridge, okay? I'm still carrying on half of the time. Well, you ate the porridge. Now what happens next? You become the porridge, or porridge become you, isn't it? Have you ever changed into the porridge, or have you ever changed, like, because Nyandev made that porridge and in the morning you woke up and you look at your face like, oh, I got beard on my face. So what happens? Oh, so that's the cosmic intelligence, that the genetic information that is in you, me, and everything. It makes them to attain their potential. Think of the intelligence in a seed. You plant it and it grows into what it is meant to grow, isn't it? So when we talk about the Mahata, so this Mahata, this cosmic intelligence, this cosmic information comes to existence. And then the way the Tantra explains the whole birthing process, when we all are being born, we are floating around like the bubbles of consciousness. And as you're floating around, you're picking up all sorts of information that is suitable for your birth. Now, can you think, it's quite amazing to think like how much responsible you are and how much proud you should be for you to be yourself in this tantric wisdom. Because you have accumulated all the information, so you are responsible for your color. You are responsible the way you appear. You are also responsible the way you think and all that, including you choose your parents. Your parents don't choose you. Okay, so your parents never choose you. You the one actually chose the parents to be, to actually go through the particular process of being yourself. So that is the cosmic intelligence. And that cosmic intelligence then that leads into Ahamkara. Now here Ahamkara is not the ego, because lots of books you will pick up, they translate it as ego. This is the I consciousness or the ability that separates everything. It gives everything the potential that it should have. So your Ahamkara that you have, you all are born with, is the primordial qualities that you're born with that makes you the person you are. Now here you can sort of thinking the way, I like the way, again, we're going, before you go to the next slide, it explains, think of the three qualities, the three gunas, and the three gunas are driven by the Ahamkara. So let's move to the next one. Now the Ahamkara really follows the manifestation. So this follows the manifestation with the three gunas. The three gunas are the three primordial qualities. Sattva, the pure essence, the absolute, the way it should be. The Rajas is the action, all that is moving, all that is going through the transformation. And then we have the Tamas, which is the inertia, immobile. So here you can actually see all the non-living material will fall under the category of Tamas. The living material will fall under the category of Rajas, as it's all going through the change, the transformation. And then all the absolute consciousness will come under the Sattva. So now here the material things begin to manifest. So you all can see the Sattva is the quality of brilliance, the light, Rajas is quality of movement, transformation, and Tamas is the quality of inertia and resistance. Now I know lots of books, again, I found quite interesting. They always look at Sattva is the absolute, the Rajas is the ego, and then the Tamas is the ignorance. But actually no, each one of them are absolute qualities, and without one, nothing will exist. So to me, like, anyone want to be around the ashram and want to come and help me and, or get involved into that, they need to have the Tamas, because that gives you stability, that gives you the feet. If you don't have that inertia that holds you in one place, then one day we are here, next day we are there, and just floating around into the universe. And then the Sattva gives us that ability to live into honesty, dignity, and sincerity. And the Rajas gives us the power to actually initiate things, bring them into the action, bring them into the function. And here, all the living, non-living things, they begin to manifest. Now in Bhagavad Gita, actually Lord Krishna, he classifies food, mind, people, our attitude, perspective, everything influenced by these three qualities. So in a way, there is actually a bit of, again, another quite, I think for me, it's a very interesting topic to discuss about on the three primordial qualities. And it really explains our personality. And we can look at the root of our existence and see, why do I behave like this in a certain way? Why does my energy behave in this way? And what can I do with it? So there is lots to learn. And in yoga therapy, we use that quite a lot, as we will go to one of the model to talk about these. So coming back to now looking at the creation now here, the Ahamkara and the Tamas. So the first quality we have is the quality of inertia, the stability. When these two come together, they give birth to the sound, which is the sabda. So these are the tanmatras, or the attributes, the experience of the material. So we have the Panch Mahabhutas, the 5 primordial elements, Akasa. So Akasa is the space or the voidness, the emptiness. Vayu, the wind. Teja, the fire, or the Agni, the heat, the energy. Jala, the water or all the liquid. And then the Prithvi, the earth. So each one of them then have the attribute or the quality. So the Akasa, the space, has the quality of sound, or the sound travels through the space. And actually also quite interesting, in the Tantra, it says, there is no voidness in this universe, because the consciousness is all and ever expanding. And in that consciousness, there is prana is eternally expanding. And if that's there, the sound is there too. And I think a couple of years back, I remember one of the quantum research they published, and now they're talking about the whole universe, where people used to believe, 20, 30 years ago, that there is a vacuum between the planets and there's nothing there. Now they believe that there is a energy there and there is a sound there that can be recorded. The wind, the Vayu has the touch, the sparsa. The fire, the heat. Heat brings the roop by the foam. The liquid, the water, brings the taste. And then the earth brings the smell, the gandha. So these are the attributes. It's sort of like how step by step is taking us through. Then when this Ahamkara, again, this I force meets with finds its union with the Rajas, then it gives the birth to the Pancha Jnanendriyas, the cognitive sense organs, our ears, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose. And then the Karmendriyas, the action organs, our hands, feet, our speech, our genitals, and the anal area, the organs of the action. And then when it meets with the Sattva, so now we are moving into the higher and higher states of existence. So the Sattva is the light. It gives the birth to the mind. And then the mind, Manas, gives the birth to the intellect. So now we are talking about the Buddhi, like the reasoning and the discernment, conscience, all these higher qualities of our intellectual field, we understand. We also have the emotions. Now emotions can be positive, negative. Emotions of blissfulness, love, joy, and then same with the will, our chitta. So these are the 3 evolutes of our Ahamkara and the Sattva. So what we got here now, so coming back to the Shakti now, the way, and it's quite an interesting thing, because most of our spiritual traditions, people, even like I heard from people when they talk about yoga, like in yoga, the body was never important. But actually here, when we look at this way to explain or understand our manifestation in different forms, then actually our body is the physical or the gross manifest of the divine. So let's look at the 3 aspects of Shakti. So we have the absolute potential. So the 3 aspects, one is the Parasakti, the transcendental or the absolute energy. And then we have the Aparasakti, the immanent, inherent, or the essential energy that is in part of our creation. And then the Para, that is between 2 of them, going through the transition. So it's almost like something is going through the process to manifest, something is manifested, and something is dissolving back. So there is a transition between what exists, what is existing, and what is manifesting. So in here, then when we look at the Shiva and the Shakti forms, it manifests into 5 different layers, or the 5 different levels. Chitta Shakti. So the Chitta Shakti, understood as the absolute consciousness. We can use the word like Atman, the soul, the spirit. Then for that Chitta Shakti to dwell, to dance, to come into the next level is Ananda Shakti. That is the power of the bliss consciousness, like Anandamaya Kosa. That manifests into Ichcha Shakti, the willpower. And then that manifests into Kriya Shakti, the power of the action. And then the Jnana Shakti, the power of knowledge. So the Shakti has taken the 5 different forms, 5 different energies, different powers to guide the living and the non-living beings. So in the Tantra yoga, then the yoga is the union, yoga is the path, yoga is the practice. So here we're talking about, how do we find this union of Shiva and Shakti? Giving us practices, giving us the tools, using our body, our subtle energy, because the Tantra, again, it really looks at our existence in the Pancha Kosa system. If you all remember, we have Annamaya Kosa, the anatomical body, Pranamaya Kosa, the energy body, changing the anatomy into physiology, Manomaya Kosa, the mind body, changing it into human being. Then we have the Vijnanamaya Kosa, all connected, the cosmic intelligence, and then the Anandamaya Kosa, the bliss body. So in Tantric yoga, in Tantra yoga, we're using those 5 bodies through different practices. It can be Hatha yoga, pranayama, meditation, visualizations, mudras, Surya Namaskars, and all that, to in tune or attune these 2 energies. Now, the word sexual energy is being used into the Tantra quite a lot. And the reason they use, because I think, to me, more I think about it, it's a symbolical expression, because we can easily understand that release of the energy. Because otherwise, in other places, when we're releasing the energy, we're using the energy, we seems to be not being able to comprehend or not being able to connect with it. So what Tantra really talks about, energy that is dispersing outward, dissolving into all that unnecessary activities, you preserve it. So this action energy, which is also the sexual energy, the physical life energy, when you draw it inward, it changes into the virya. When you feel full of vitality, you feel alive again. And then that virya changes to tejas, where you become creative, you become connected. Tejas changes into the ojas. That's what, I guess, in the Tantra yoga, we want to get to that point where the energy begins to transform into spiritual energy. And when that ojas manifests, then we get access to this absolute or the supreme or the divine consciousness. Now, when we're talking about Tantra yoga, actually, Tantra yoga is all inclusive. And I like the way, Lord Shiva explains, and the way some of the gurus people I've been with, they really call it as a Sangam. Sangam is the union, or the Sampurna is the complete. So the Tantra yoga is the Sangam. It's a union of all different yogas. And the Tantra has a huge importance of Hatha yoga, and that is the using your physical practices, your asana, mudra, pranayama, cleansing practices, Ashtanga yoga, Raj yoga, because it takes us through, even though in the Tantra itself, Lord Shiva doesn't really talk too much about it, but he said Ashtanga yoga adi. In one of the verses, he mentions that people who want to follow further from, so the Hatha yoga is to prepare for Ashtanga yoga. So the 8 limbs, like we studied throughout our time in the ashram, the yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. Then it takes us into the mantra yoga. All the sounds, the mantra, the singing, chanting, again and then some of the subtle or more sacred chants and the nada or the sounds about the Bij mantra, the chakras, or the sound, the chanting of the Om for long period, like we have the Om chanting for extended period, that sort of practices. Yantra yoga, where we use different mandalas, different geometric shapes, like you all had a little bit of experience of yantra yoga when we were doing our sukha pranayam. So we were drawing the mandala in our visualization, if you all remember, like the triangle for the heart, there is a triangle pointing down for the solar plexus, the moon mandala, the square mandala. So we have many of these mandalas in our visualization. Kundalini and Chakra yoga. And again, in the Tantra, actually, it's quite, I know in modern time, every time people talk about the Tantra yoga, either they think I'm going to do with something chakras or I'm going to do something with sex. But in both practices, in absolute Tantra, in a traditional Tantra, there are a very little of a big picture of Tantra yoga. So the Kundalini and the Chakra yoga is a very little of it, where we're working on awakening of the Kundalini on that. And then the Karma and Jnana yoga are also very well worshipped as the service, selfless service. And then the wisdom practices are all through the Tantra yoga are there. And that sort of brings me to conclusion from here for now. So that's just a really a very, I know I fly through all this, I know we can spend all day, but at least this would have given you all a bit of picture that the whole course, all the teachings that you have taken in the folder, they all come under the one umbrella of Tantra yoga. And I guess I have my own reasons not to call it that way, because people get really disappointed. And I had so far 3 people who came to do the course, years ago, were in different times, because I used to call the Tantra yoga, we follow the tantric tradition. And they were literally disappointed on day 1. And then they were like, oh, what should I do now? Is there a way I can get my money refunded? And I'm like, look, we can't refund the deposit, but the rest, yes. So I'm like, off you go. We're not stripping off here. We are on a different level of love. We're not into that kind of love here. But that's just really a very general overview of the Tantra yoga. And obviously, then each topic I mentioned here, we can discuss on each one of them. And there are abundance of practices and things to go through. So I will stop here and let's open up for some discussion, some questions and answers, and see how you're all doing.
May I ask a question? So when we talk about Shiva and Shakti as the goddesses, were they then, the like the first 2 basics that were there? When we talk about before we had the Big Bang and everything, were they the 2 energies already existent, or did they come out of the Big Bang? Or how can I relate, them being the goddesses and being these energies, or is it just the same and you cannot separate it?
Think like when we're looking at the gods and goddesses, please hear now, this is the Lord Shiva. He is talking this, okay? So he's not really talking about himself as a god here, okay? He's referring the Shiva and Shakti. We're not talking about them as a husband and wife. These are the words they used for the absolute potential and the consciousness that existed before anything else. So when we're looking at, the thinking of, I see your point, you thinking of this is statue, the dancing Lord Shiva we're talking about. No, we're not talking about those 2, because those 2 are discussing these teachings. Okay.
So they have not so much, they cannot be connected with these energies, or?
No, they are, because they are the one realized one. And this is why we called Lord Shiva as the Adi Guru, or the Yogeshwar. They realize and how he is talking about them.
Okay, yeah.
So then the Lord Shiva and Parvati, the Shakti, they are the manifest aspect of the god and the goddess that we worship them in that form.
Okay, thank you. That makes it.
In absolute, no one really knows if they exist or if they don't exist. It can be as what yogis did. You see, to me, when I look back at the yogis, for the yogis, they realize this practice called imagery much earlier than our modern science. Now you see the neuroscience now believing in imagery because they see the power of it. So, you know, the image that you create, image that you visualize, you fantasize yourself into, it changes your neurobiology. It changes, then once your neurobiology changes, it changes your anatomy, it changes the hormones, it changes your health and well-being. So the yogis, they understood that somehow, how we don't know, okay, because they never really talked about it, but somehow they understood it. So they the one actually gave us all these different forms of the gods and goddesses in their creative way to give a foundation to our mind. So to me, you know, if I'm trying to meditate, let's just think Nyandev here trying to sit and meditate and thinking, okay, there is something that you picked up from your eyebrow and you dipped it into the ink and you're trying to split it in the 1 millionth fraction. I would never get anywhere, would I? Because my mind would not even believe it. That's just like, so then what yogis did, they said like, okay, why don't we take a form of this Lord Shiva and Shakti? Let's meditate on them because those are the ones who gave us these teachings. And then through that, you will make your focus less and less on more and more on less and less. So then gradually, hopefully we'll experience this idea, this principle in through our own consciousness. So that's where the Hindu gods and goddesses comes into our storage.
Okay, thank you. That makes it a lot easier to put in perspective. Thank you.
And I think that the names itself, the terms, the way the yogis and way these masters used, there's lots of terms used over and over again and again in different contexts, and that definitely does not help, I know, because we are using the Shiva and Shakti in form of the god and goddess, but we are also talking about the absolute, and sometimes it gets like, which one I'm talking here now, isn't it? Anyone else?
Yes, yeah, I have one question that it's like related more about what you were saying now, and it's also just curiosity. You were, who is a yogi or yogini? Who can really define himself or herself like a yogi or a yogini? Because I think nowadays it's, you know, you can see online and everywhere people like also in Instagram, yogi, yogini, but I think that it's not like that. In India, maybe it's not like that, like here in the West tradition, that everybody is a yogi. I do like a teacher training course and I'm a yogi. And the second question is, so Ahamkara, it's not the ego, it's
No.
the I. Okay.
Yeah. I think that's some of the words like people, I don't know, like I find quite sad really, that way they're being translated. And I guess it's hard because some of the words don't really exist in English. So you're trying to translate something from the ancient language into the modern language, world language. It's not really easy. I think, Ricky, to me, if anyone uses the title of yogi and yogini, just ignore it. Because somebody who gets to that point, they would never have that title. They will never need it. To me, it's almost like, you know, when you feeling happy and you're feeling blessed, would you advertise on your chest like, I'm a blissful Ricky? And if people need to advertise it, then they're not. So I think it's definitely have become like a big fashion. In the Western society, it's more. Even I've seen like people in classes saying, "Oh, welcome yogis and yoginis." And you know, to me, whenever somebody says like that, I'm like, honestly, if one of you would have said like, I'm here to become a yogi or yogini, I would have stopped teaching. I'm just like, come on, you're just on a wrong place. It's a long way to go. So like to me, I personally, even like for myself, you know, I know my guru gave me the title of Yogacharya, but I tend to more prefer, like when I'm talking to you all as a teacher, I tend to enjoy more thinking of myself as a yoga sadhaka, as a yoga follower. And I definitely enjoy more, because when I think that way, then it brings me to my reality to start with. And I start to feel like I'm just a baby in the field of yoga. And I don't know, I guess the deeper you dive into it, less you know, higher, you know, when I'm in the surface, when I'm thinking intellectually and thinking from my ego of intelligence, then I'm like, wow, I know so much. And then I can talk about, I've written all these books and I got all these books that still need to be published and this and that. But actually, when I close my eyes and go in, then I realize that actually what I'm talking is nothing. What I know is nothing compared to how far we can go. You know, I haven't really experienced what I talk tonight, you know, even half of it. So, you know, I've given you some information tonight, and I'm happy to admit, you know, that it's not something I have experienced yet. So then, oh, I haven't experienced, how can I call myself a yogi? Maybe I can do a stretch here and a stretch there, but that doesn't really mean anything. So yes, Ricky, that's a bit of tricky business really, but please, I would be more happy if you don't use that title with your Instagram and your Facebook photos, okay? You don't need that. To me, you know, if you want to call yourself that I am a blissful, Ricky, just keep smiling and that's enough. If you really want to feel yogi, live that inner equanimity, live that inner peace, live that inner happiness, live that selflessness through your actions, through your desires, and just live your life. And you don't need certificate for that, do you? It's almost like, do you need a certificate to come and tell me I'm alive, Nyandev? Of course you are alive. To me, becoming a yogi really means, are you living it? And if you're living it, do you need to have a certificate for telling everybody, oh, I'm really living my life to the full potential? And I think Swamiji mentions a few times that wherever people use that title, they are totally messed up. And then the real yogis I have come across, you see, they don't even want to call themselves a guru. They don't want to call themselves a teacher. They just live a really simple life. If you mopping the floor, they will mop the floor with you. If you're making a cup of tea, they will make a cup of tea with you. They don't have the separation. They don't have the dualism. They don't really have that I, me, and you. It's all we, it's all us. And that's what I personally would prefer. Instead of worrying about the titles and what people call, just think, can I live into that we? The I is causing the duality. It separates you and me, okay? Remember, every time we say I and you, it's separating us. And then the we is the collective consciousness. So the Shiva and Shakti in union, in balance, where the dualism doesn't exist anymore. So where do we want to be? So this labeling is a separation. It's a dualism. We don't need that. And yeah, it's a sad, another sad story. Another sad story that when people love using those titles, and I have come across quite a few, and I'm like, oh my God, really? Somebody, I think I was talking in one of the satsang on the couple of years back, one of the course, and one of these girls, she was constant like, Nyande, we are yogis and yoginis. And I think I got really annoyed at one point. And I'm like, well, if you are already believe that you are yogini, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm really sorry. I'm afraid I have to let you down, but I definitely don't feel that I am anywhere near to be a yogi. I said, I'm not even anywhere near to be a yogi, or I'm even, sometimes I feel I'm definitely on the path, but I can also tell you all, I also feel at the time that I'm too far away even to come near enough to be on the track of being a yoga practitioner or a yogi. It's a very difficult path. It's a great path, but also very difficult, as you are walking on the edge of the sword, on a cliff, okay? And the both sides, there is nothing. If you fall either side, so don't believe if somebody tells you that they are yogi or yogini, I would not go near them. And if I say that, then just leave me, okay? Just say, okay, Gyan, they will see you sometime in next life when you realize that you're not there yet. And then the way Amaji always makes fun, she said, when somebody becomes a yogi or yogini, they would not exist anymore. So like the Shiva word itself, see, we talk about that. It means absolute consciousness, but it also means from the Sanskrit root is nothingness. So to me, becoming a yogi or yogini is becoming nothing. I hope the answers your query. So I think the best title to use really is a yoga sadhaka and yoga sadhaki. If you feel using, so that's like a follower, sincere follower of the yoga. I will type them for you all, yoga sadhaka. So the sadhaka is the male follower, and then the sadhaki is the female follower of the yoga. And then we have the Yogacharya and Yorini. So the Yogacharya and Yogacharini, one who begin to teach yoga, but they don't really teach, they're more like modeling the practices. They follow and let people see what they're doing and then follow it with them. Like the modern term we have is like yoga teachers. And then I'm not sure, I'm trying to remember the Sanskrit word. I forgot the Sanskrit word, but we have what we call the preachers, like preaching. So then, like I like, Amaji always used to say the yoga instructors will fall under the category of preachers. They're preaching. They are actually standing on the stage and telling people what to do, but they will never do it themselves. It's like, some of the churches I come across, they talk about some of the ideas, and then when you see them backstage, they're like, oh, no, there I was reading the Bible. Now I don't have to follow it anymore. And same in Hinduism too. I know some of these gurus, they can talk, what they talk on the stage is one thing, and what they do once they come out of the stage is totally different thing. But I think the first four are really beautiful terms to be associated with yourself and use when you feel this. So yoga sadhaka and sadhaki is the first title we get, and then the Yogacharya and Yogacharini is the second title that, like in our tradition, we've been given. And then the third title that can follow at some point will be Swami and Swamini. So that's the saint. When you renounce your needs and your reasons, you just do what you do and let people take care of everything else, then that's like a saint, or that's like a renowned monk in our modern language. Like Swamiji, our guru, he was given that title by his guru. Before I came back to the household, I used to have that title myself too by my guru. And if I go back to him, then I hope I will go back to the Swami. So that was my name before. I used to be called Nyandev, Swami Anantanath. So that's my Nath guru sort of used to have the name. So in the tantric tradition, again, that's also like there are like lots of step-by-step sort of journey through the practices and the evolution that we go through. But the yoga sadhaka and yoga sadhaki is certainly my favorite title, even for myself, unless I'm communicating with people in regarding to teaching. Otherwise, I use that more often for myself. And you can use that too, Ricky. You all can use those titles. It's really, really nice way to also think about it, that I am the follower or the practitioner of yoga until I become a yogi. And when you become a yogi, you would not be there to come back and tell me. Okay, anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering because you said that Shiva is the ultimate consciousness or nothingness. and Shakti is the creation, creative, and transformative energy. And that you can also say it as like active and resting. And I think I heard you saying that in this case, Shiva then is resting and Shakti is active.
Yeah, those words, I'll change the slide around. Yes.
Oh.
The Shiva is the resting part of the consciousness. And because it's never changing, it's just eternally there.
Yeah.
And then the Shakti is constantly in the transformation.
Oh, but it's super interesting because I don't know, like sometimes I notice, especially spiritual people, translating into like male feminine. And in that case, I don't know, it's always translated as like female being like resting, or like, for example, they translated to yin, and then like the Shiva to yang. And then I'm like, no, but yeah, this, yeah. So I don't know. It's nice that it's like, yeah, because for me it feels like when you translate it to like male and feminine, then it like comes to really like labeling again, like the polarity or duality. And yeah, this is, I don't know, this feels good.
Yeah, good. You know, that's how it is. And in a way, you know, like the way, if you look at the consciousness and the Shakti, well, Shakti is really the one manifesting even in the male and female. Well, the female is the energy that creates the life. And, you know, like some of the facts when somebody says that connect that with the resting, no, it doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
But, you know, again, like to me, sometimes if you're reading a translation that is done by the patriarchal culture, you know, the Western people, because that's how the mindset is. Well, like the Eastern, or especially the Hindu culture, it comes from a totally different perspective. So every time we think of the creation, the life itself, we will always worship the mother goddess aspect of the energy, the Shakti aspect. And then when we're talking about the transcendence, that liberation, then we are worshipping the Shiva, the male energy, the male aspect of the consciousness. And it's because the energy is holding it all pervading, and then the Shakti aspect of energy is going through all this change, transformation. It's giving birth to something new every day. And I think if you all remember, I mentioned it several times. So the universe, when we're talking about, you see, everything is living matter in its own. The only thing is what we call from our cognitive experience is a non-living matter. Well, the life of that non-living matter is so slow that we just cannot understand it. We cannot understand that at some point the universe has a birth. Or in that birth, the earth, all these metals, all these animal elements, they came from somewhere. So that means they will have the birth, isn't it? And they're constantly going through the change, and at some point they will also have the death when it goes back where it started. So it means there is some sort of life. For us, you see, every time you and me talk about life, or modern science talk about life, it means something that has the ability to move. Something has the ability to recreate or reproduce. So in that way, all the non-living material doesn't fall into that category, because we are not being able to see that all that matter is actually the foundation, the building block of the life. How does a tree grow? It is taking something from that earth, isn't it? It is taking something from the energy, taking something from the water, and we eat it, and then life goes on. So actually, the living material also got to have some life, some mechanism in it that enables it to go through that transformative process. So here, everything is actually the aspect of Shakti that is going through that living, the dynamic, transformative process. And then the Shiva is sort of the absolute. And I don't know, like now and then I try to like also understand in everything of, you know, if you are on a boat, okay, you are on a boat. Now you, and there is another animal, you can think of anything you like. And there is a grass, there is a food and all that. And we used to have this analytical question in one of the reasoning where you have to think creatively, and some of these questions can be really stupid. And I remember one of that when I did one of the exam, and it said, so there is a boat, and this boat is at its absolute. If you lose a fraction of the weight, then the wind will fly it away. And if you have a little extra weight on it, then it will sink into the water because it cannot hold any more weight. So the question has the two aspects. And number one will be, what if that animal has eaten the grass that is already there on the boat? Now, you see, most people will think that the weight has been taken away, isn't it? And I can tell you half of the people in the exam will say the boat will flew away with the wind. And then the second part says, what if the goat or the cow, whatever it is, it releases its waste product on the boat? Then lots of people will tick onto it easily. The boat will sink because there is extra weight on it now. So when you think of the whole universe as a balance, in a bigger picture, nothing has ever changed, is it? Yes, it is going through the evolution. It is going through everything that is manifesting, everything that is dissolving. But ultimately, everything is there. So this all-inclusive is the consciousness of Shiva. And then all that is going through the change between the 2 points is Shakti. And I think you quite right, Oscar, easily, like I definitely, it's not fair to actually just say male and female energy here. Even though we are connecting it with it, but it's not really that way. Anyone else, or that's enough for tonight? I can see some of you ready to sleep, and I'm going to try my best to wake up in the morning. Come on, Anya. Yes. No, I thought you were unmuting. I'm going to try my best to come alive in the morning, see what happens, but I don't want to promise yet. See how the boys and me are going to do. If anyone else want to teach, then let me know. Well, we'll see you all next Tuesday then. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti